Greetings, noble acolytes of the Force, and welcome back to the archives. My friends, we are bringing you something quite special. After pursuing every holocron we had on lightsaber combat, we have noticed just how many notable duelists that there have been in the Star Wars mythos. We talk regularly about all the great Jedi and Sith alike that have graced the pages of history, but now, my friends and acolytes, we have decided to put each of their legacies to the test by placing them in a tiered rank list. In this holocron, we have devised exactly 5 categories and 5 tiers in which to place the finest combatants in all of Star Wars. Before we delve into it though, we have a few disclaimers and a very specific disclaimer. We judge duelists on this list by their lightsaber skills alone. That means that force ability and potential are delegated as completely irrelevant outside of the confines of physical augmentation. Also, this is not going to be just another compilation of fan favorite duelists. Our choices for this list and their placements were based purely off of the cold hard facts. So we ask you to keep an open mind and not get too disappointed if your pick didn't make it on the list, or in the tier that you would have desired them to be placed in. Now, with that out of the way, put away your lightsabers, acolytes, for we are in the presence of true masters. And today, in 5 separate tiers, we will be breaking down the absolute pinnacles of lightsaber duelists in all of the lore. And hopefully by the end, we will have put together the definitive duelist ranking list. Starting off here, we have tier 5, where we have decided to place Obi-Wan Kenobi, Plo Koon, Jaina Solo, and Voto Siosk Boss. Obi-Wan Kenobi was an obvious pick for this list as he has gotten himself to the point of being the master of Form 3 Sarisu, and the only one to have been able to defeat General Grievous. Obi-Wan already made a name for himself as a Padawan when he killed the Sith assassin Darth Maul, and his reputation would precede him for the rest of his long life. Plo Koon was one that we definitely wanted to mention as well. Despite being Kel Dor, who are naturally more fragile as a species, Plo Koon was an exceptionally powerful and noteworthy duelist, opting to utilize Jem So and Xian in his combat in order to take out his opponents quickly. In fact, Plo Koon was one of the only Jedi Masters that earned Maul's respect on reputation alone, as well as the only Jedi to defeat Yoda in a sparring session. Jaina Solo was a prodigy much like her brother in Luke Skywalker's Jedi Academy, and even though she was nowhere near the power of skill of Darth Caedus, her brother, she still did what was necessary and managed to kill Caedus in single combat. And even though he was wounded at the time, Caedus was a formidable foe, wounded or not. And the last person that we will be mentioning for this tier will be Voto Siosk Bosk, the Jedi mentor of Exar Kun. Master Boss was a saber instructor of the Old Republic, and was a Jedi Knight during the Great Hyperspace War, and was among those that still wielded proto-sabers. By the time he was an old man and training Exar Kun, he was using a wooden stick imbued with the Force itself. With this humble weapon, he managed to nearly defeat Exar on more than one occasion, and you'll see exactly why this was so impressive when we get to the later tiers. Now, moving on, we have Tier 4. Tier 4 is the largest category on our list, as many of these fighters fell right in between the best of the best and outright legendary. In our attempt to create balance, we have scrammed 9 duelists just in this single tier. We'll run through these pretty quick, so let's begin. The first one will be Legends General Grievous. In canon, George Lucas didn't want Grievous to overshadow that of Darth Vader as a cyborg Jedi killer, and decidedly made him more of a slimy mustache twirler in Revenge of the Sith. However, in Legends continuity, specifically the Clone Wars 2003 shorts, Grievous was a mighty foe that slew Jedi by the dozens. In the famous Battle of Hypori, General Grievous fought against 6 Jedi at once, including several members of the Jedi High Council. In this confrontation, he killed Jedi Knights Sha Gi and Tar Sayer before besting Aayla Secura, Kakruk, and Shak Ti. The only one left standing, albeit barely, was Ki-Adi-Mundi, who had to be rescued by a clone recon squadron shortly thereafter. Again, there is obviously a massive difference between canon and Legends Grievous, so for Grievous to be on tier 4, we are strictly speaking this depiction of the character and various comics from Legends. Next up, we have Ulic Qel-Droma, a Jedi Knight who lived in the Old Republic era in the New Sith Wars. Fans of the story of Exar Kun will know Ulic Qel-Droma well. He was exceptional for his time, utilizing Jem So and Ataru, something that Anakin Skywalker would later attempt to do himself. We have placed Ulic Qel-Droma on this list as he was the only one who fought the Dark Lord Exar Kun to a stalemate. Exar Kun would later comment that Ulic Qel-Droma was the only one he ever considered to be his equal, although we may have a different opinion. Moving on, we have Battlemaster Kyle Katarn, a man who is quite notable in the EU, and the Battlemaster of Luke Skywalker's Jedi Academy. Luke respected Kyle Katarn's lightsaber skill a whole lot, and often commended him for it. Along with Kyle, we have also placed Mara Jade and Jacen Solo/Darth Caedus here. Mara Jade was trained in lightsaber combat by Sidious himself, and furthered her training with Kyle Katarn and Luke. Eventually, Mara was killed by Darth Caedus, who had to use a dirty trick in order to defeat her, as she nearly bested him in single combat. Caedus himself, though, is obviously no pushover, as Luke Skywalker commented that Caedus was more powerful than Vader. And as many of you may have seen recently, we made an entire video in Holocron going over Caedus' skills and powers in the Force. Caedus' skill was such that he managed to inflict several wounds on Grandmaster Luke Skywalker before retreating. But now, let us continue with Tier 4. Also in this tier, we have decided to place Revan. Many might think that Revan was placed somewhat low on our list, but let's not forget exactly what this list is for. Only the finest lightsaber duelists in all of the lore. Revan may have indeed been powerful in the Force, but his skill with the lightsaber keeps him right around this level, which is obviously still massively impressive since he's around battle masters and individuals who Luke claimed rivaled Vader. Revan was a Jedi warlord who led the front lines against the infamous Mandalorians and even killed Mandalore the Ultimate in single combat. He very often bested his friend Malak in duels, despite Malak himself being quite well renowned as a combatant. Beyond this, we unfortunately know very little as far as Revan's own saber feats, beyond his incredible combat record, but again we lack the specifics, and that is why we have placed Revan here. Next up, we have Darkside Corrupted Anakin Skywalker or Darth Vader pre-suit. For this tier, we need to make a distinction between Dark Anakin and Vader. So, when we refer to Vader, he will be within his suit. Dark Anakin is Vader, but out of his suit and before his injuries. Fueled by the sudden steroids that is the dark side, Dark Anakin stormed the Jedi Temple and crushed every single Jedi that stood against him, including the Temple Guards and even the Battle Master Sindralig. On the heels of Dark Anakin, we place Mace Windu in this category, the inventor of the Form 7 variant, Vapad. Though we are denied the privilege of getting to see Mace Windu fight very often, his record is undefeated, and only through trickery was he destroyed by the hands of Anakin and Palpatine. So obviously Mace Windu is ranked exceptionally high all time. And to cap off Tier 4, we have placed Count Dooku. Like Revan, some may think Dooku deserves to be higher on this list for being such an elegant practitioner of Makashi, and known specifically for his lightsaber skills. However, hopefully you'll agree with us when you see the upper tiers. And now, Acolytes, we enter Tier 3. To kick off Tier 3 with a boom, we have placed Darth Sidious, Malgus, Bane, Krayt, and Cade Skywalker. Darth Sidious is one that many anticipated would be on this list, considering how he is described to have mastered all 7 forms of lightsaber combat. His preferred form was that of Juyo, but he would switch styles whenever it suited him most. He was ambidextrous, and could change his fighting style on a whim, keeping his opponents completely unsure of what he would do next, though he much preferred to use his powers in the Force. Sidious was the culmination of all of the past Sith's teachings, and fully intended to let his opponents know this. Though Sidious was only in a handful of duels in his life, despite any duels he may have had with Plagueis during his training, Sidious only fought Maul, Savage, and a couple of Jedi. Yet, even still, he took them down with astonishing speed and precision, making fools out of the venerated Jedi Council members, and even standing up to Grandmaster Yoda. It was said that Sidious fought like a blur, destroying his enemies before they could even see him coming. This was one of his favorite techniques, utilizing force speed in lightsaber combat. Another one of his favorite techniques was one that he had learned from Darth Bane, which was to fight less than your actual skill level, never revealing where it truly lay, so to as deceive your opponent into a false sense of security, and then striking them down at the precise moment. The lightsaber choreographer for Revenge of the Sith described Darth Sidious as the ultimate and a master of all 7 forms of lightsaber combat. It is actually due to this description and this style of dueling that there is a big debate as to whether or not Sidious actually threw the fight with Mace Windu, or if Windu's victory was legitimate. Beginning our trio of heavyweights, we have Darth Malgus. He started out as nothing too special in the Sith Empire, just as the apprentice of the Sith Inquisitor, Darth Vindican. Though, Malgus quickly made a name for himself on our list by completely decimating the Jedi Battlemaster of his era in Chaos and Darach in single combat, doing so only as an apprentice. Malgus was a man who literally embodied the very physical spirit of Jem So. Malgus ripped through all of his opponents with intense fiery fury. Unlike his future counterpart in Darth Vader, Malgus didn't bother trying to learn a whole lot of footwork, but opted to just pounce on his targets like a hungry Nexu. Malgus allowed himself to sink into to the dark side so deeply that he became like a snarling beast as he hammered away at his opponent's defenses, often striking his foes down in one mighty swing of his blade, 2.2 meters in height, 6 inches taller than Bane and Vader, and completely unhindered by cybernetic limbs, though he did eventually have to rely on a respirator. Malgus wasn't what you would call a proud combatant, meaning he never held back no matter who he was fighting. If his lightsaber was ignited, he put his body into every single strike. What's more is that he didn't let up until that person was dead, ensuring that his momentum stayed at a constant. Malgus was a warrior who hated wasting time and despised failure even worse. For him, allowing his opponent even a window to breathe was never acceptable. Moving on to our second heavyweight on tier 3, we have Darth Bane. While this was a man who was most noted for his force abilities and his creation of the rule of 2, Bane's skill with the blade are grossly overlooked, and anyone that has read the Bane trilogy will know this. Bane progressed in lightsaber combat much faster than his fellow students at the Academy on Korriban. At first, his lack of proper training showed, and he got bested by many of the students, including the Academy's finest duelist, a Zabrak by the name of Sirak. However, after Bane received one-on-one training with the Academy's battlemaster, a Twi'lek named Kasim, he bested Sirak. Not just besting him, but humiliating him. After Bane was fresh out of the Academy, he would duel his own blade master in Kasim, who was sent to kill him by the Brotherhood of Darkness. Bane held his own against his old master, and despite Kasim being among the finest duelists of this era, he found himself on the back foot against his own apprentice. Now, Bane didn't win this duel, and had to resort to a force ability to destroy Kasim, but he still handled himself quite well. After this, Bane was so good with the lightsaber and so powerful in the Force that none of the Sith ever wanted to challenge him, not even Lord Khan, who was the leader of the Brotherhood of Darkness. Bane's style of combat was similar to that of Sidious's, fighting less than his true ability in order to lure his opponents into a false sense of confidence, and then striking a critical blow and revealing his true power all too late for his opponent to counter. Darth Bane used a unique style and a combination of Gemso and Surisu, mastering both of them to their highest degrees. This would be like if the style of Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin merged. Bane had become such an expert at Surisu that he once walked through a downpour of rain while spinning his blade in Surisu orbits. This created an umbrella with his lightsaber, and not a single drop of rain touched him. When it was time for his apprentice Darth Zana to rise up and challenge him, she was unable to defeat him at the blade, even being humiliated, and had to resort to using Sith magic. And for our final big hitter on tier 3, we have Darth Krayt. Darth Krayt was once a Jedi named Asherad Het, one who was actually a human inducted into a clan of Tusken Raiders. After surviving Order 66 and then turning to the dark side, Asherad took the moniker of Krayt and would return to terrorize the galaxy as the Sith rule of one and its new emperor. Krayt held immense force powers in his day, but very few could match him at his best, which was of course with the blade. As a Jedi, Krayt wielded 2 green lightsabers in battle, utilizing the difficult Jarkai style of combat. He was able to defeat Aurra Sing in a lightsaber duel when he was still just a mere Padawan, an impressive feat considering his own father, a fully trained Jedi Knight, had been killed by Aurra Sing before in a fair duel. While he had many impressive feats as a Jedi General in the Clone Wars, his true skill shone through as a Sith Lord. Before this, however, Asherad did engage Obi-Wan Kenobi in a lightsaber duel on Tatooine, and held his own against the Jedi Master, but did end up losing. That didn't stop him, however, and he continued to hone his skill and chose to specialize in Nyman while still retaining the Jarkai variant. His skill with his blades was great enough for him to quickly defeat 4 Imperial Knights with very little difficulty. He had been strong enough to survive Order 66 by not merely hiding, but by literally slaying hundreds upon thousands of clone troopers, letting his skill alone speak for himself. But his accolades only continue. Krayt was able to fight a much younger Cade Skywalker and almost defeated him. This was whilst he was being weakened by parasites, mind you. The only reason he lost this duel was because he was shot in the back by Cade's mother. Darth Krayt basically had a nearly undefeated record against other Sith, as he had absolutely annihilated his apprentice, Darth Warlock, the only Sith foolish enough to betray him. Darth Krayt later even stood up to Karness Mur, one of the founding members of the Sith Order. Interestingly, Krayt also combined his saber skill with the the martial art of Terraskaze, the very fighting style that was made to counter Force sensitives. And now, to cap off tier 3, we have Cade Skywalker. This may surprise some of you that we've placed Cade above beings such as Mace Windu and General Grievous. However, we have to take a look at the facts and accept that by the peak of Cade Skywalker's power, he had defeated Darth Krayt fair and square in lightsaber combat. Not to mention, Darth Krayt was at the height of his power, and that alone already places him in this tier. But to go further into Cade Skywalker's lightsaber feats, Cade originates of course from the Skywalker bloodline, and he had also trained under his father, who was already an exceptionally strong duelist in and of himself. During the escape on Ossus, Cade as a boy and as a Padawan struck down numerous stormtroopers and Sith warriors alike by himself. Many years later, when he was faced down by Darth Nihil, he took up a lightsaber to defend a friend, and despite not having trained since leaving Ossus as a young boy, he managed to hold his own against a fully fledgling Sith Lord, and one of Darth Krayt's premier generals. Unfortunately, we have no official documentation of what form Cade Skywalker used, although if we had to guess, we would guess a hybridized form of Ataru and Nyman, forms 4 and 6. We say this because Cade was a pretty aggressive lightsaber combatant and used many acrobatic motions. Along with this, he was quite a versatile combatant and augmented his saber skill with sudden attacks in the Force, a key trait of Nyman. And now, Acolytes, we have entered tier 2. The penultimate tier. And, as a little teaser, we have only placed 2 characters in all of the lore in tier 1. In tier 2, we have made the difficult decision to place Legends Darth Vader, Exar Kun, Master Yoda, and Darth Sidious. I know what you're thinking, Acolytes. Wasn't Sidious in tier 3? Well, yes, my friends, but the Sidious in this tier is in fact the Dark Empire Sidious, the one who was resurrected in a younger clone body with all of the power and knowledge of his older self. From Legends, of course. Dark Empire Sidious was in no way inhibited by old age, such as the Emperor Luke saw on the second Death Star. Dark Empire Sidious was described as so fast that it appeared to others that their forces had been dispatched by a phantom. He embarrassed Luke Skywalker the first time the two of them dueled, and only lost the second time because Luke was inspired by Leia's Force harmony. Following Dark Empire Sidious, we can confidently say that the next candidate for tier 2 should be Darth Vader, strictly from Legends continuity. In canon, they sort of had to nerf him down sometimes between stories in order to make them more believable in recent years. I do not believe that a Legends Darth Vader would lose to Obi-Wan Kenobi if they met during Obi-Wan's exile. However, Vader in the comics, video games, and books from Legends absolutely floats anyone that he comes across. After inhibitors were placed on him in the form of his new bulky suit of armor, Darth Vader quickly realized that his old form of fighting would never work again, and he learned this lesson the hard way. However, rather than attempting to fight through the limitations of the heavy armor, Vader fought with it, using the armor's massive weight and his powerful prosthetics to provide his blows with incredible force while maintaining pinpoint precision. He never utilized anything less than a killing blow, and his swordplay demonstrated extraordinary unpredictability, speed, and deadly accuracy. Even his most simplistic moves contained enough strength to nearly disarm his opponents. His new style made him a monster, a hulking abomination of Jedi death. In his new form, he retained the Force and counter style of Gem So that he had mastered as Anakin, but now swapped out Shien in favor of implementing Sarisu, having learned one final lesson from his old master. But Vader was not done. He then augmented it all with the footwork and blade work of Makashi, deciding to take it not only to that level, but then use Dun Mak, which Dooku also used on Anakin multiple times, learning from both of his instructors over the Clone Wars. Very soon, Vader gained enough control to also implement strikes from Juyo, and with that, he was perfect. A killing machine, a monster, the true Dark Chosen One. Vader had mastered his emotions when in combat, and calling upon calculated bursts of the dark side while not being blinded by emotions like he was as Anakin. Now, dueling with determination and relentlessness instead of pure-based rage. He was able to take down dozens of Jedi at once, mocking them by turning their flippant blade work and acrobatics against them. Vader alone felled more Jedi than almost any other Sith Lord in history, save for one other, which we will get to in Tier 1. Vader's deadly determination and centered mindset inspired legendary fear in his opponents. Darth Vader would persevere no matter what, no matter how much damage was caused, no matter what they did to him. Vader would never surrender, sometimes casting aside all defense and even regard for his own safety to ensure his ultimate victory. In his fight against the reborn Maul, Darth Vader decided to win by impaling both of them through the stomach with his lightsaber, catching Maul completely off guard and ending the clone definitively. Moving on from Vader, we have Grandmaster Yoda, who has made it onto our second tier as the greatest master of Ataru ever seen. Despite being extremely old when we encounter him, Yoda continues to be one of the greatest swordsmen the galaxy has ever seen, and remains so even until his death, with many Jedi considering him the greatest Jedi duelist of all time. Yoda was the one who trained Dooku, and his most notable achievement was that of winning the lightsaber duel with Darth Sidious. Let us explain though. Also, it is implied in the novelization for Revenge of the Sith that Sidious was either disarmed or threw his lightsaber away in the duel in the Senate building. The point remains that he decided to fall back on his Force abilities when dueling Yoda, where of course Sidious was Yoda's superior. In the duel, Sidious quickly realized that despite his knowledge of all 7 forms, he was no match against the being that had studied his own form and perfected it for 800 years. Sidious at first attempted to run away from Yoda, wanting to get to a more advantageous position in order to fight the Grand Master, knowing that he likely would not last in an open, even playing field. But after the avatars of light and dark began to rise into the Senate chamber on the speaker's podium, we can see Sidious's anger begin to show, as he is quite literally unable to pin down the old Grand Master. During the Clone Wars, Yoda didn't participate in too many battles hands-on, as he mostly stayed back as a tactician and a diplomat. But when Yoda did, he turned the tides of battle on its head, such in the first episode of the Clone Wars Ambush, when Yoda won the day with only himself and 3 other clones. But now, my friends, we have reached the final member of Tier 2. That, of course, is the legendary Exar Kun, the man who went down in history as the inventor of the double-bladed lightsaber. Interestingly, despite his awe-inspiring reputation, Exar Kun was only ever in a few lightsaber duels, but won them all. The closest we have ever seen Exar Kun to losing was a stalemate between him and Ulic Qel-Droma that we mentioned earlier. Exar Kun was a crafty and a ferocious warrior. He preferred to use Nyman, but not exactly in the fully balanced way that it was intended to be used. Rather, Exar Kun created something different, something terrible, a more aggressive style of Nyman to totally catch his enemies by surprise and slip past their defenses effortlessly. At the time, Exar Kun was considered the greatest lightsaber duelist to have ever lived by both the Jedi and the Sith. These surprise tactics by Exar extended to his use of the double-bladed lightsaber. By suddenly changing the intensity or length of one of his blades, Exar was often able to trick his opponents into overextending themselves and creating openings for fatal counterstrikes. Exar Kun was an innovator and a destroyer. When in direct combat, Exar Kun focused the Force into himself and bolstered his physicality with a mastered Force rage. Think what Anakin tried to do in Revenge of the Sith. This Force rage completely tore apart just about everyone he fought against. There were very few that could stand up to the might of Exar Kun. Before we get into our final tier, we wanted to place in an honorable mention, that being Darth Mar. We weren't entirely sure where to put Darth Mar in particular on this list as a duelist, as his skill with the lightsaber is very mysterious as he is overall as a character. However, Darth Mar is considered to be one of the finest duelists of his era, and yet, most of his glorious stories are kept pretty vague. What we do know is that he was described as being better at protecting a planet by himself than a planetary defense shield. This description on Darth Mar came from his fellow members of the Dark Council, proud Sith Lords that served under Vitiate, and yet, even they feared the skill that was wielded by Darth Mar. And now, finally, the moment of truth. Who are the ultimate masters of the blade in lightsaber combat, worthy of riding above all of the others? There were many candidates to consider for Tier 1, however for us, the choices were rather plain. We have selected merely two avatars, one that represents the light and the other the dark. For Tier 1, the only masters of the blade that we deemed worthy are Tulak Hord and Grand Master Luke Skywalker. These final 2 picks stem from one of the main factoids on that both of them have been noted as having taken on entire armies by themselves and triumphing with just their lightsabers. While not much individual information exists on how Tulak Hord used his blade, we do have a handful of legends and eyewitness accounts that have been salvaged from crumbling scrolls and stone tablets. Tulak Hord's power and skill in combat was legendary among the Sith of his day. Darth Kreia gives a very interesting account of Tulak Hord to Mitra Surik. In the account, she says says that Horde was the greatest duelist of all of the Sith Lords, and was considered remarkable even for his time. This is especially impressive when you take into account what Kreia had mentioned about the skill of the Sith Lords of this era and the era of Horde. She said that we are as children playing with toys compared to the prowess of the old masters. Tula Kord had single-handedly broken 2 Jedi sieges on different worlds, having come against an army of ancient Jedi. According to an account given by his main general, thousands of Jedi lay dead in the aftermath of the battle, all killed personally by Tula Kord. The exploits of those mentioned previously on this list are indeed impressive, but none of them have reached the level of downing thousands of Jedi by the blade alone. And as for our Avatar of the Light, we of course couldn't pass up the opportunity to talk all about Grandmaster Luke Skywalker's skill with the blade. While most noted for his Force abilities, by the very end of his career, Luke had become the greatest lightsaber duelist to ever exist in the Jedi Order. We are talking about Legends, of course. Before we get into what he managed to do later in life, we wanted to briefly talk about how he handled himself in a duel as a very young man. In his very first lightsaber duel against Vader on Bespin, he actually managed to land a grazing hit on Vader's shoulder. The way Vader growled after being hit tells us that Luke didn't hit a cybernetic arm, but rather found a very specific part between his cybernetics and his chest plate, right where a little bit of Anakin's flesh remained. A lucky hit maybe, but what happened on the second Death Star was not mere luck against Vader. The Jedi Knight Luke Skywalker was contending toe-to-toe with his father. Though Darth Vader by this point was much older and slower, there is still something to be said about how Luke manages to hold his own rather well, especially against a Sith Lord of Tier 2 Darth Vader caliber. What happened next though, after Vader provoked his son into the dark side-filled fury, actually managed to impress Sidious. Just simply by observing Vader, Luke managed to perfectly replicate his Form 5 lightsaber combat and turn it against his father in a storm of emotions, beating him back with power and precision despite never being trained in the form. This again greatly shocked and impressed Darth Sidious, which is why he was cackling with such glee after Luke struck his father down. Later on in Luke's life, he would develop Form 5 and find the perfect balance in it, claiming that the secret to utilizing the form was actually compassion. Luke created his own lightsaber form by melding the concepts of Form 3 Sarisu, Form 5 Gem So, and Form 7 Vapad, which is incredible in its own right. What resulted was a type of lightsaber style that was functionally impossible to stand against. The perfect lightsaber form. Luke stalemated and eventually triumphed over the young Dark Empire Sidious in a duel so intense that Leia could hardly see the movements of Luke as he engaged with the Emperor, but she did sense titanic waves of power generating from both combatants. This climactic duel finally ended when Luke managed to slice off the Emperor's hand, doing what not even Yoda could do, which was definitively triumph over Sidious. Even though Luke at this point was being boosted by Leia's Force Harmony, it still took incredible amounts of control for him to perfectly utilize the power that he was given. And although it helped, it certainly wasn't Leia's power that took the hand of Dark Empire Sidious, but Luke's own lightsaber. So for that, he deserves major props, and this is not even the height of Luke's power. Luke has also fought his way through countless Yuzhong Vong warriors in one battle. While he was doing this, he was moving as one with the Force, and it was as if his single blade was actually dozens of Jedi at once, as some Jedi described him to be. After this slaughter, Luke defeated more than 5 Slayers, while Kip Duron, one of the most powerful Jedi of his time, could not best the Slayers at all. After this, Luke Skywalker slew Supreme Overlord Shimra Jamain, who was stated to be the best warrior of the Yuzhong Vong, despite being poisoned at the time. In one of his finest hours, Luke managed to defeat a strike team from the Lost Tribe of the Sith, besting 15 Sith warriors, having fought all of them basically at the same time. And, as George Lucas put it, not only is Luke Skywalker the most powerful Jedi or Sith to have ever lived, but he is also the greatest lightsaber duelist ever. And a full potential Grandmaster Luke Skywalker absolutely remains on Tier 1. So Acolytes, this was a much longer video than normal, but if you stayed around till the end of the holocron, we commend and thank you. We know that some of our picks, exclusions, and overall placements might draw some controversy, and we do invite you to talk about your views on our list in the comments below, as well as who you would have expected to see on here, or which parts of our placement you actually agree with. But again, keep in mind that we reviewed only the strict facts and feats of skill in our combatants. This is not a favorite or best character list, and it's not even ranking their force potential at all. This is purely the blade, and that may be why you didn't see many combat-oriented beings on this list, such as Darth Maul. But again, my friends, I would love to see and hear from your lists in the comments down below, and we hope to see you again very soon, Acolytes. And until next time, on guard, and may the Force be with you.